All right, folks, I just recorded a whole video without turning on my mic, so this is take two. So this is the first video on late adulthood. So with late adulthood, we're talking about age 64 to 65 and older. It ends with death. And so the amount of time one spends in late adulthood, if you're lucky enough to get to that stage at all, it's going to be variable. And we do know that there are more people in this stage, in late adulthood, than in previous times. And first of all, I'm going to say late adulthood, and I'll say older adults typically. I will not say things like old people, and I will not say the elderly. The terms like the elderly, they are problematic because they make it seem like that's that person's entire description and definition. It's problematic like using a term like the poor. It's better to say someone who happens to be living in poverty, someone who happens to be older than 64 or 65, someone in late adulthood, but they're a person. They have more qualities than just their age. So, just letting you know, I'm going to use that terminology. And so we've had a demographic shift in terms of the number of people who are in late adulthood, or at least proportion to younger folks. 200 years ago, there were 20 times more children under age 15 than people over age 64. Now, it's only 3 times as many. Now, I've got some statistics from 2015. I don't have updated statistics, and I definitely do wonder if the recent pandemic has altered the current percent of the world's population that's 65 or older, because that group, people in late adulthood, were hardest hit, by the pandemic, and they were more likely to die from COVID-19. So I can't necessarily say that we're going to have the same percentage, right now in 2022, the time that I'm recording this video. But in 2015, 8% of the world's population was 65 or older. In the United States, it was 15%. All right, folks, since we live in the modern age and I have access to the Google, I decided to go ahead and check on that. I didn't find any 2022 statistics yet, but I did find some 2021 statistics, and it actually had a higher percentage. It wasn't age 64 or older, it was age 65 or older. And okay, no, the original statistic was 65 or older. So I said it was 15% in the U.S. The 2021 statistic that I found actually had it at 16.5%. All right, so, for my classes, I always like to stick with what's in the textbook, and that was the 2015 statistic, just to make it easier for keeping things straight, unless I specifically say, ignore the textbook, I want you to learn this more up-to-date research, so it's okay to learn the 2015 statistic, 15% in the U.S. But the basic point is it's more than it once was. People are living longer thanks to advances in medical technology, things like vaccinations, more sanitation, just more general knowledge about healthy lifestyle and things like that. And it doesn't affect everybody equally, especially when you consider things like socioeconomic status. But we see things getting better. And one big area, too, is smoking. Used to be, not only did a lot of people smoke, but they smoked everywhere. Smoke was, you would go and sit and eat in a restaurant and everybody was smoking. People smoked on airplanes. We now know that smoking is harmful to your health. And so less people smoke. I'm sure that's a huge factor. There are a variety of factors, but there are more people in late adulthood than previously. Now, another thing, just to introduce you to, and even though I said I don't like using the term old people because it's sort of stigmatizing, or it's used that way in the U.S. certainly, there is a typology where we talk about different types of older adults, and one of them is the young old. People who fall into the category of young old, they are the largest group, first of all. So most older adults fall into this category. They are healthy, active, financially secure, and independent. So that's kind of the good news. If you're lucky enough to get to late adulthood, it is most likely, based on what we've seen from research, it's most likely you're going to be in the young old category, where you were older but doing fairly well for yourself. Now, you may be in the old category, and they suffer losses in body, mind, and social support, and they can care for themselves. So they can live on their own, but they do, they have notable problems. The oldest old, they are dependent, and relatively few fall into that category, but those are the folks who need more care, and we'll talk later about some of the things to consider in that category. All right, so just be familiar with that typology. And then finally, I want to address that when I teach about late adulthood or aging, sometimes I see some interesting misconceptions and ideas from my students. Like, they'll say, oh, well, what's it like for you in late adulthood? And I'll be like, but I am not in late adulthood. I'm like, oh, okay, almost, right? I'm in my 40s right now. I'm like, no, folks, no, I'm not close to that age. I often wonder if there's just a time where, like, okay, so anybody over 20 something, they're just all old. In fact, one of my friends who specifically taught a class on adult development and aging, they assigned a paper where people had to pick a movie that depicted a couple in late adulthood, because they were talking about romantic relationships in late adulthood. And the class was specifically about late adulthood. They had been talking nothing about, everything was late adulthood. All the research, all the terminology, everything was, okay, we're talking about people 65 or older. It was everywhere in the class. They said, okay, now you need to find a movie that depicts some people in late adulthood, so age 65 and older, and talk about them in this paper. And they were contacting me, and they're like, you will not believe what my students think late adulthood is. One of them picked Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds in the movie The Proposal. Not late adulthood. And the most egregious, perhaps, was that one of them picked Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing. If you were not familiar with that movie, he was in his 20s and she was a teenager. And that, yes, that is icky. That's a huge problematic issue with that classic movie from the 80s. But yeah, and it was just like, wait, did they think he was in late adulthood? Did they just think since he was older than her, that's what counted? And so I just want to make it clear, because I will have those moments where people will be like, so what do you mean? That's like 40, right? And I'm like, no, we're talking about 65 or older. And yes, many people 65 or older are very healthy. They are taking care of themselves very well. Many are still working or volunteering or staying very active. All right, more to come about late adulthood.